Hi, this is Munson with Munson Music, and we're going to talk about how you can play an A major chord across the entire fretboard. And we're going to start off with just a baseball octave idea for A major. So you may want to just kind of do a note find for A notes just all over the guitar. And then what we can do is we can kind of add third shapes to that to kind of get our major quality. And one thing you may want to do is kind of take one root and then kind of see how many thirds you can go to near that root. So on the low E string, you can do it on the low E string 9 or the A string 4th. On the D string on the 7, you could go to the low E string on the 9th fret, or you could go to the A string on the 4th fret, or you could go to the D string on the 11th fret, or you could go to the G string on the 6th fret, or you could take the high E string as kind of your root and then work that to the G string on the 6th fret, or you could work that to the B string on the 2nd fret, and then you could take the 2nd fret on the G string and kind of work that to the A string 4th fret as a third shape, or you could work that to the B string on the 2nd fret as a third shape. And then we can kind of go from each octave and kind of work those shapes to kind of drill those shapes. So we could take the B string on the 10th fret and go to the D on the 11th fret, or we could go to the G string on the 6th fret, or we could go to the B string on the 14th fret, or we could go to the high E string on the 9th fret. And then from there we could take the A string on the 12th fret on the low E, or on the A string, and kind of work that to the low E on the 9th fret, or we could work that to the A string on the 16th fret, or we could work that to the D string on the 11th fret. And then we could take the next A note, kind of the G string on the 14th, and work it to the A string on the 16th fret, or we could work it to the D string on the 11th fret, or we could work that to the G string on the 18th fret, or we could work it to the B string on the 14th fret. And then we could kind of take each A in turn and then kind of see how many thirds you can find around it, kind of working those third shapes. And then we'd be adding fifth shapes to that. So we kind of have our power chord shape kind of for our root 5. And we may want to kind of take each root note and kind of work fifths around that too. So you could work the A string on the 7th fret as kind of a fifth shape from the low E. Or you could work the D string on the 2nd fret. And then we could take the D string on the 7th fret, kind of work that same idea. Now we could kind of work the fifth shape to the A string on the 7th fret. Or we could do the fifth shape to the G string on the 9th fret. Or we could do the root to the 5 shape to the B on the 5th fret. And then we could take the high E and kind of work that fifth shape to the B string on the 5th. And we could take the G string on the 2nd and work the B string to the 5th. Or we could work the D string on the 2nd fret. And then from there, then we could kind of work each A and kind of work fifth shapes from those A notes. And then we could go to the B string on the 10 and kind of work that to the G string on the 9. Or we could work to the high E on the 12. And then from the A string on the 12, we could work it to the D on the 14. Or we could work it to the low E string on the 12. Or we could work it to the G string on the 9. And then from there, then we go to the G on the 14. And we could work the fifth shape to the 14 on the D. Or the fifth shape to the B string on the 17th fret. So you can kind of take each A note and then kind of just try and nail fifth shapes. That's kind of the idea here. Is like, that's how far it is to a fifth. Because when you're building a major chord, those are your main three intervals, is root, 3, 5. And if you put those together in any shape or any form on the guitar, those are the notes that make an A major chord in different places. So we could even kind of put those together. Actually, there's a very common way of teaching how guitar shapes move called the caged way that the chords move. Because your C shape goes to an A shape, and your A shape goes to a G shape, and your G shape goes to an E shape, and your E shape goes to a D shape, and then your D shape goes to a C shape. So it's almost as if you were going to capo in different places, you'd have a different chord shape. So if you played it open, you'd have an A major chord shape for an A chord, or A's and C sharps and E notes is what we're playing. And then if you capoed 2nd fret, you'd kind of have a G shape to get that same chord. And if you capoed on 5th fret, you'd have an E shape with that chord. If you capoed on 7th fret, you'd have a D shape for that chord. And if you capoed on 9th fret, then you'd have a C major chord shape. And then if you capoed on 12th fret, then you'd be back to kind of your A major shape. But it can also be cool to kind of just jam over those notes. But there are different ways of kind of putting those together. And playing just those three notes in different combinations is something called an arpeggio, where you're breaking up the chord in different places. So you might want want to take a couple common shapes and kind of see how those change as you go from octave to octave. Actually, the G string to the B string fifth is one to watch out for, and the G to B string third. So you may want to kind of play around with that. And then we could work a jam around that. So we might have just kind of an A drone in the background, a little bass beat, right? So you can kind of work those notes like your scale pattern and kind of play around with different ideas with them. So you may want to kind of work eighth notes as an idea through different patterns of root 3, 5. Could be kind of a cool idea. Or doing triplets. So there are rhythm ideas you can play around with. Or you can find hammer-ons and kind of work those shapes from notes that are kind of working around that chord. Or you can even look for little shapes actually for the chord too. So the caged way of looking at things is kind of a big overview. But you could kind of dissect things into a smaller shape. So for instance, you could put the low E string with the A string on the 4th fret, with the D string on the 2nd fret, and that's a little A major chord, and kind of a root 3 and 5, kind of voicing is what we call that, or kind of the order that the notes are coming in. So we're playing the A and then the C sharp and then the E. But as long as you're still playing those 3 notes, it's still an A major chord. So you could kind of take the D string on the 7th fret, work the 5th shape right below it, and then the 3rd shape on the movie on the 3rd or 9th fret. And then that would give you another A major, but now you're ordering the chords C sharp and then E and then the A. So kind of 3, 5 root is the voicing. And we often call that first inversion for a chord, kind of in technical terms. And then if you took the A note on the 12th fret, we could work the 5th shape on the 12 on the low E, and then the D string on the 11. And that would be another little A major chord, but now we're stacking it up 5, root 3 is kind of our voicing. And then from there, on those 3 strings, we do back to our root 3, 5. So you may want to kind of look at those little shapes, 3, 5, root, 5, root 3, root 3, 5, for the chord to kind of have some little places in the chord. And then we could actually kind of take out those same shapes and work them on our next string combination, like our A, D, and the A, D, and G. So you could kind of stack them up for the A string 12 and get that same root position voicing, that root 3, 5 for the A, C sharp, E. So now I'm A 12, D string 11, G string 9. That's kind of a little voicing for that. Or we could take the G string on the 2nd fret and work the A string on the 4th fret and the D string on the 2nd. Kind of end up with the 3, 5 root of the first inversion for the chord. Or we could take the D string on the 7 and work the A string on the 7 for the 5th and the G string on the 6th for our 3rd. Kind of have our 2nd inversion. So it's exactly those same shapes in combination for those chords. Or we could take our next string combination, the D, G, and D, and work those same shapes. So now we're working D string on the 7th for our root. And then you've got 3rd and 5th. So now our root position shape has changed. Actually, what's happened is the B string has kind of shifted things over 1 fret for our 5th shape that we're working on for root position. So you got the A and the C sharp and the E there. Or we could kind of take our A on the B string on the 10 and work the G string on the 9 for the 5th, and the D string on the 11 for the 3rd. We'll have another little A major chord that way. Or we could work a very common shape where you have a root on the G string 2nd, 5ths on the D string 2nd, and the B string on the 3rd is kind of another C sharp. So you've got 5 root 3. So it looks like a regular A shape. It's kind of that 5 root 3. So it's a 2nd inversion shape that we normally think of as our A major shape. 3rd. You can even work it across strings too. You can work the A string on the 12 to the B string 14 and have almost like a compound third, kind of a blackbird third. So you can work Louis on the 5th to the G string 6th as kind of a little A major too. So there's some other ways you can kind of see those thirds, like the on the 7 and then the high on the 9 would be another third. But anytime we put those together, then we end up with an A major in some kind of relationship. And working those notes of root 3/5 in different combinations, you're going to run across those shapes in different forms. So we can just jam out on that. A very, very cool thing to kind of play around with. So you may want to kind of experiment and see what you can say with major chords. So good luck!